Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me. This is Kathy and I am back with card number 3 using the Penguin Poop stamp set from Whimsy Stamps, and I'm also using a brick stencil. The one that I'm using is from My Favorite Things, and the last I checked I think that they were out of stock, but I know that Whimsy Stamps also has a brick stencil, so I'll be sure to link to both of them in the description below, along with all of the other supplies I used, and also the colors of Copic markers that I used, which are very few because this card had very simple coloring. Moving on to the card, I started out by stamping 2 of the penguins with My Favorite Things Extreme Black Hybrid ink onto a piece of 80-pound Cougar Super Smooth cardstock. Next, I started to color in the penguins, and for the penguins themselves, I used the same colors as I did in my previous videos, which I will be sure to link to those videos at the end of this video. Very simple coloring. For whatever reason, I still feel the need to use 3 different markers on their beaks, and it's really not necessary. 2 would be just fine, but I guess I just kind of got into a groove here because I was making one penguin card after another. Speaking of cards and videos, the videos that I have are not necessarily uploaded in the order in which I create the card. This card I actually made before I made the Valentine Shaker card. And as you can see, I've got those strips of cardstock off to the side, and that's to help with the glare of my new lamps. So I'm still trying to figure out right where they're supposed to go, although I think I found it because in the Valentine Shaker card video, I had moved my lamps a little bit and I didn't need the cardstock taped down to my craft mat. So back to the coloring really quick for the ice cream cone. Very simple coloring. I used one color for the cone part itself. I used G43 and G40 for the ice cream, and then I used a fine tip brown pen to add some chocolate chips, so the ice cream cone would be a mint chocolate chip ice cream cone. I used B60 to add a little bit of shading around their tummies, and then I blended that out with my Colorless blender. After I had the coloring done, I masked the penguins. I had stamped them onto Eclipse masking tape, and I wanted to throw this in here. I had used Avery removable labels as a mask on something else that I was working on, and it did end up tearing the Cougar Super Smooth cardstock. So for this card I chose to use the Eclipse masking tape instead, and I didn't have any problems with it tearing the cardstock. So maybe test it on a piece of scratch paper or a little scrap that you may have to make sure that whatever masking paper you're using on whatever cardstock you're using, that it doesn't tear it up. After I had the masks in place for the penguins, I used painter's tape across the bottom just to mask off the ground. Next, I used painter's tape to hold the stencil in place so I could stencil on some pink bricks. For the bricks, I used Spun Sugar Distress Oxide ink and a makeup blending brush. I didn't want to have the bricks all over. I just kind of wanted them concentrated around the penguins and kind of fade off up into the distance towards the top of the card. After I had the stenciling done, I removed the stencil from the cardstock and removed the masks and the painter's tape from the penguins. And then to ground my penguins a little bit, I just used some warm gray markers. I started with W4 and concentrated that mostly closest to the bodies of the penguins, and extended those shadows out a little bit more with W3 and blended all of those out with W1. Next, I grabbed my stitched rectangle dies and ran that through my die cut machine. After I had die cut that panel, I decided to add my sentiment, which reads, "Ice cream solves everything." And it's a very, very fine print, so I made sure to use my stamp platform. And the ink that I used to stamp the sentiment is VersaFine Onyx Black ink. Removed that from my stamp platform and put the card together. I adhered the stamped panel onto a piece of mint green cardstock that's cut slightly larger than the die cut that I used, And the stitched rectangle die that I used measures 4 by 5 1/4. Next, I just adhered that flat to a pink A2 sized note card, and that finishes up my card for today. Thank you for stopping by. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you've not yet subscribed, I'd love it if you would. And don't forget to ring the bell so you're notified every time a new video is posted. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.